Hey everyone, it's me, Corrie Sommers, your local Los Angeles Realtor. I mentioned that today because we have a very important topic to discuss and how it impacts you, and that is Measure ULA. You're not going to want to miss this. I have some real important information that will help you understand what is about to happen. Hey everyone, it's me, Corrie Sommers, your local Los Angeles Realtor. Today we're going to dive into what Measure ULA that was recently passed is all about and how it impacts you directly and can potentially impact you in the future. So first of all, Measure ULA was part of the many things that was voted on recently in November of 2022. Now, Measure ULA has been promoted as a way to help homelessness, and that's in part because it proposes funds over $1.2 billion to build about 26,000 homes for the homeless and to curb the growing homeless problem and hopefully reduce it. But the way they're going about this is increasing the transfer tax when you sell your home. Now, if you haven't sold a home in Southern California, you might not be aware of this. Think of it as kind of a sales tax when you sell a car. So the transfer tax fee, which was 55 cents per $500 on the sale price of your home, has jumped. And what I mean by that is this: it hasn't jumped for 100% of everyone. But if your home sells between 5 million and 10 million, it has skyrocketed to 4%. And let's talk numbers, what that means. The reality is, here in the Los Angeles area, and when I say Los Angeles, I mean LA County, but most specifically, we're talking about the city of LA, which is the LA Basin and all parts of that, as well as the San Fernando Valley. And the truth is, today you really can't get a modest entry-level home for under $1 million. And what does that mean? A 3-bedroom, 2-bath, somewhere above 1,200 square feet up to 1,800 square feet. It's very, very difficult to find one under $1 million. And there's just quite a few districts left in the city of Los Angeles that do have it, but it's not necessarily the districts that we all want to live in, right? So our reality is that our home prices are so increasingly higher than the rest of the national average that a modest home is over $1 million. So what does that mean for a home that's 5 to 10 million? Well, this was touted as, let's tax luxury. Is luxury truly 5 to 10 million today, or is that the upper middle class? Think about this. In 10 years, your home that maybe you purchased for $2.5 million as a modest home, 25 to 3,500 square feet, 4 to 5 bedrooms, and a decent sized lot, maybe 6,700 or 7,000 square feet of a lot, could very well sell for over $5 million. And that means when you sell, instead of a transfer tax of 55 cents per $500, it will be 4%. So let me just kind of go over what numbers mean when we're talking about that. So on a home, 5 million to 10 million, your taxes on a $5 million property, and this again is the city transfer tax, will be $200,000. If you're talking a home that's $9,999,000, you're looking at almost $400,000 of a transfer tax. That's pretty significant, right? And that's a lot of money to think about that you're going to be paying in taxes, never mind your taxes on your personal income. This is just to Los Angeles. It bumps up to 5.5% for homes over $10 million. So let's just kind of start at that $10 million point. At $10 million, your transfer tax will be $550,000. Now, I don't know about everybody watching this video, but I'm sorry, $550,000 just for taxes, and that's not even including my personal taxes, that's a lot of money. And if your home sells for $15 million, that's $825,000. Wow. Now let's kind of recap a little bit about what Measure ULA is. Measure ULA, also known as United to House LA, was proposed to assist in the unsheltered in finding housing to alleviate the issue of homelessness. Now the reality is, here in Los Angeles, there have been past measures approved that haven't resulted in housing, and they haven't been measured or audited in a way to provide that information to us, the general public, as to what's happened with the money. And an example is Measure HH, which was to provide, in 2016, let me back up, 2016, Proposition HHH, 3 H's, was voted into law. And this was to provide $1.2 billion to build 10,000 units of homes to support homelessness in Los Angeles. Now, here's a reality. The price of building and labor continues to go up. COVID has made a bit of scarcity, which has greatly increased that price. So that means when they're doing these numbers and they're calculating it, they're always calculating it on the cost to build in that point. So let's just say the cost to build was $300,000. Well, that same $300,000 today is going to be pretty much twice that between supplies and labor. So these measures don't always work the way they're supposed to. And yet it casts a burden on some of our population. And I know there's a lot of people that feel, well, if you have a lot of money, you should bear that burden. I might not make $3 million a year, $2 million a year, $1 million a year at this point anyways. But do I want to be penalized for working hard and growing and building a business and excelling and reaching a point where I make that type of income where I'm able to afford a $5 million home, and hey, when I go to sell it, I'm going to be really, really taken to the bank for taxes? Something to think about. But more importantly, the reality is that this type of measure impacts all levels of housings and price points, from renters, homeowners, landlords, and it also really discourages development. And here's why. With Measure ULA, the workforce to build property under this measure has to be a part of the union. Not every builder is working with employees that are a part of a union. So now you're limiting your work pool, which is going to make it more difficult to find those that you need to do the building. Plus, there's probably more of a premium price for them because they are a part of the union. And don't get me wrong, I understand people join unions for a lot of really valid and important reasons: health coverage, rights, work hours, etc. I'm just saying that sometimes what sounds good to legislation and to put on paper doesn't work the way it looks like it should. And there tends to be ramifications that aren't always well thought out. And I'll give you a great example. The TOC project or measure that was passed a few years ago, right? It sounded like a great idea. And what that measure was is if someone wanted to build property within about a mile from the nearest bus stop, making it walkable in Los Angeles, that they would be able to do so. And this would supersede maybe zoning areas where they couldn't build such a thing and they were not getting approved. And so I'm going to point out a very specific area in particular in Toluca Lake. There was a cluster of buildings that were owned by someone that bought these maybe in the 60s. I honestly don't remember when, but basically bought them, had them for a long time, has the post office in there, a restaurant, UPS store, and another business. And when he passed, it was passed on the ownership to his children. And his children decided, hey, we want to maximize this space for more money. So we want to tear all this down, build apartment buildings, and still have storefronts on the street level so we can get the storefront rents and we can get the apartment rents. But it was not being passed. And so they got very creative by hiring creative-minded folks who said, all right, well, the TOC thing has passed, and this is close to a bus stop in Burbank, not Toluca Lake, but a bus stop in Burbank that's about a mile away. Let's submit this again. The thing about it was that the bus stop in Burbank was not a working bus stop. It was an old bus stop that no longer is part of any bus route. But as you might be familiar with the way law and legislation works, if you're not very specific, there is a gray area. So it didn't specifically say a working bus stop on a valid, current, active route. It was bus stop. So during COVID, they managed to get this passed through, despite it being denied a few times. So now, this cluster of buildings that once had the post office, UPS, an amazing restaurant with an outdoor patio that was like a sports bar, restaurant, just like such a staple in the neighborhood, and some business offices have been torn down and they're getting ready to build. My point in sharing the story is things don't always work out the way they're intended. Rental in Toluca Lake and the price points that they're planning to list these apartments, $3,800, $3,500, is hardly affordable to someone that's in low income. So getting back to Measure ULA and how this affects you. So again, let's say you purchased a home 30 years ago for $450,000, and now you've done some remodeling of your home. Maybe even you did some updates, and your home is now going to sell for $5,100,000. You will be paying 4% on that property transfer tax. Let's say your home is worth more than $10 million. You put it on the market and it sells for over $10 million. You'll be paying a property transfer tax of 5.5%. This goes into effect April 2023. Now, if you've been on the fence of selling your home, and maybe you've been hesitating because of other tax concerns, or where are you going to go, or you're thinking of moving out of state, or maybe even downsizing and you're just not ready or sure, I encourage you to really think about it. Depending on where you're at in life, your age, there are some things, some propositions out there that might help you. Like if you're over 55, you can transfer your tax basis of your current property to the purchase of a next property. And I actually have a video on this, and I strongly encourage you guys to stay to the end, watch that next video. Or maybe you're thinking of leaving California altogether, or your home is just too much. The kids have left, it's just you and your spouse, or maybe even just you at this point, and it's a lot to take care of. You might want to talk with your tax preparer about what's the best thing to do. Is the best thing to put your home in a trust and will it to your children? Is the best thing to sell it now and pay a little bit of the transfer tax fees that is currently in place? Or is it best to wait it out and ride it out and see what happens in the future? Only you and the person that guides you on your finances is going to help you make that decision. I'm here to give you the most accurate, the best information to help you kind of see where things are at and how it would work for you. And one last thing I want to leave off is just an amazing client success story that I had a couple months ago. I had a client that unfortunately, like many people, had gone through a divorce, and in the divorce, she could no longer afford the same district neighborhood that she was living in with her husband and her kids. And having to move into a less desirable neighborhood impacted the kids, and of course just that dynamic of a family breaking up impacted the kids, and so one of her children would never stay with her and always stayed with her husband. And in the last couple years, she went through a couple of deaths in the family. Her parents passed over the last couple of years, and as a result, because of their diligence and planning and working with financial experts, they had some significant money to pass along to her. And so it was time for her to say, I want to do the best thing for my family, my kids. They're going to be going off to college. I want to make sure I can pay for college. I want to have a better place to live, for their last years at home with me to be the most enjoyable. So we found her an amazing home. Got a little bit off in my negotiations, but basically a brand new construction home that had never been lived in, and was a big step up from where they had been living in a neighborhood that she and the kids loved and wanted to be in. And now her kids want to stay with her, no longer with her spouse. So it's a joyful moment for her. But the biggest thing about it, which I was super excited about, despite her purchasing a home that was probably 2.5 times the home that she was living in and we're selling, she actually is now paying less monthly expenses. Now, part of that was because she was fortunate enough to be able to use some of that inheritance to pay the home. But just in general, going to a bigger home usually means more electricity. It means more bills and other aspects of home maintenance and upkeep, but she was actually able to reduce her expenses. To me, that is such a win, and that's my goal for all my clients, is to make the best financial decision, to put yourself in a position to get to your dream home and goals. And sometimes that means the home right now is a stepping stone to the home for later, but it's the planning aspect. Sometimes that means you're in a home that works for you and you can buy your dream home, but it's more advantageous to buy a couple of rental properties to secure your retirement, so that when you do buy your dream home, you have plenty coming in to cover all your expenses on everything. Just a little bit I'm sharing with you. Again, Measure ULA is definitely going to affect many people, and I think the long-term trickle-down effects to everyone is yet to be seen. When we think about rental property, anything more than 4 units is actually commercial space, and so these buildings that have been built with rentals and high-end luxury apartments, as well as some of the current standing buildings, it's going to make those sales more difficult. And it might discourage those sales, which, again, We have yet to see what the long-term effects of this are. Thank you guys so much for watching today. If you have any questions about this measure, if you want to have a direct conversation about what you should do with your home, you can get on my calendar in the link below, and I would love to talk with you and help you. Thank you guys so much. Again, don't forget to watch the video that's going to come up on the proposition that will help you transfer your tax basis if you're over the age of 55. See you guys next time.